This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are joined by a very special guest, Kris Drew of the Menace2Sports Podcast. We're going to be talking about with Kris a lot of Ohio State football. We're going to be talking about what he thought of last year. What are the things that they needed to improve? How are they doing on recruiting? We're going to get the ins and outs. We're going to give predictions, all that, and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. We are back this week. I'm Ben. He's Josh. And then we have another guest. It's not my brother, so we've upgraded, which everyone knows. But I'm going to throw it over to Josh. Josh, introduce our guests. What's going to be happening? Let's do this.
Yeah, Ben. So joining us today is another fellow college football fan with Ohio roots. He's a legend on the rugby field, a man who every front desk worker at Planet Fitness knows by name, the pride of Akron, Ohio, and co-host of Menace2Sports, Mr. Kris Drew.
I feel honored. I feel like I got to go on stage and accept an award now.
That was
all of those things are things that if you guys listen to Menace2Sports every week like I do, you will pick up on and know truly what I'm talking about. But Kris, why don't you tell us about your role with Menace2Sports and what you do in the sports business?
Oh, man. So I linked up with Zach during the 2018, maybe in 2019 Michigan State Ohio State game. We started chopping it up, and I had been sports radio for some time. And when he hit me up about kind of taking Menace2Sports up to the next level, he hit me up, said let's get a plan, let's do it. So I write the shows, and I present them to Zach. I do all the social media stuff, and then I'm just a research junkie in terms of college football. So deep in the college football trenches, I am, man. Deep in the trenches. Man.
Yeah, if you guys have never listened to Menace2Sports, Zach is Zach Smith, the former receivers coach at Ohio State. Him and Kris do a show every day live during the week, 12:30. Definitely go and check that out. But we are happy to have Kris here on the show. As I said, Kris is coming to us from Akron. Kris, is that where you grew up? I know you kind of talk about being from Atlanta sometimes as well.
Yeah, so I was born in Atlanta, and then my mom got a job back up in Akron. She's from Akron too, and so moved up here, and all Akron to the soil. I don't really spend much time in Columbus. In fact, my only couple times in Columbus have been with Zach. But I'm a huge Ohio State fan. My mom went to Michigan though, man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Crazy, house divided. But she's an academic, so I can't knock her for that one. But I'm from Akron, and I work for a Cleveland radio station, so I'm Northeast Ohio through and through.
Kid from Akron, you know?
Yeah.
Were you there when LeBron was in high school, or is that too early still?
No, I was here when LeBron was in high school. The St. V days. Actually, it's funny because the radio station that covered all of his games is WAKR, and they're 2 studios down. So like we're super familiar with LeBron. The I Promise School, if you drive that way while I'm pointing, it's probably about 5 minutes up the road tops. So just like deep entrenched in kind of LeBron territory.
Gotcha. My tiny connection, I guess, to St. V in Akron is that my high school, I went to Bellevue up North Central, and we played St. V's in the state championship football. My junior season would have been 2013, and they absolutely beat the crap out of us, like 42-14 or something crazy like that.
2013, that was the Paris Campbell team.
Yeah, that would have been. That would have been. Yeah, that would have been Paris Campbell.
Yeah, that was that. So that was Paris Campbell and Dante Booker. So Dante Booker won Mr. Football Ohio. They had another middle linebacker, the kid Newman. He was a really good player. Aaron Bushner was the quarterback. So I know a lot of those guys because so Paris graduated high school at 17, so he was 16 as a senior, and so was I. So like I had like a deep connection to Paris, who has no clue who I am, but I knew who he was because I was covering high school sports. I used to do stats for OHSAA and Akron Beacon, so I got to see Joe Burrow play St. V, and that was crazy when I was in high school. And then obviously like the Paris Campbell years at St. V were absolutely insane. He also played basketball, but he wasn't very good at basketball. So,
I did hear the story when you were on your podcast about you, the Akron officials approaching you and telling you to dumb down the numbers.
Fluff the numbers. Because
crazy.
St. V Hoban did more ticket sales than any university basketball football game that year.
No,
not at all.
Surprised?
No, not at all. I was just a wide-eyed kid. I was like, all right, like I'm trying to make it in the sports world. Let me
fudge it.
Let me do what the suits say. So we lied. Now I'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, hey, Kris, we are excited to talk
absolutely
college football with you today. We're going to kick it off with Ohio State discussion. And I kind of know how Ben feels about the way that last season went for Ohio State football. I'd like to just get some thoughts on what you saw from the team last season. It was definitely, I think, underwhelming from what most Ohio State fans are used to.
Definitely underwhelming. I'll start with this. Obviously, the defensive scheming was bad, and Kerry Combs was in over his head through and through. And anybody who kind of, took the time to watch Matt Barnes knew that his philosophy stuff wasn't a fit with what Ryan Day wanted. And Ryan Day's really particular because he likes a single high safety look because that's what he struggles scheming against for the most part. So that's what he would like. Now, I don't know where to start in terms of personnel, but I thought there were some personnel blunders with Ohio State, like majority of the year. I thought guys that should have been out there were not out there. Guys that shouldn't have been out there were out there. I think losing Josh Proctor early was so bad, but I'll flip to one more. I really think Ohio State deserved to lose those 2 games. I think they deserved to lose those 2 games because I think they were a year ahead of schedule. Yeah. That was the youngest team Ohio State's fielded in over 20 years. That's the youngest defense they fielded since like 1998 or something. And they deserved to lose those games. And honestly, like that's just kind of setting things up for the next 2 years to be really explosive and really good. But last year was such a disappointment, man. We were soft. There was a lot of holes on defense, like I said, and then schematically, I know Zach likes to break it down, but it was just a mess. People weren't being taught well, and I think it's really alarming that the 2 top linebackers, kind of that played last year, were the 2 guys that spent the least amount of time with the linebacker coach Al Washington. Yeah. So that's telling. Like bad habits were being taught. It wasn't that guys were being coached up. It was bad habits being absolutely taught.
I think even you go off of too, like, I'm here in Hungary, so watching games at 2 a.m. really makes you notice things that you normally don't notice. But I think even the big games, right? Like I'm thinking of like, the Oregon game, even the Michigan game. And it's like, you look at those games and I've never seen a Ohio State team. I've been watching Ohio State games with my dad since I was probably before I was born. Right. And my dad looked at me on FaceTime at that Michigan game and goes, "We're going to lose this game." And that was like a minute in. And he said, "I have not seen a Ohio State team be so soft. Ohio State team not seem to care on defense." Like he goes, as much as he hates trestle ball, that old knowledge, he loved the fact that those defenses could just light up somebody if they wanted to.
Yeah, it bred nastiness. Like, do you guys remember a single big hit this last year?
No,
like
I don't.
Last season, I can't remember a single one. Yeah. And that's alarming. I'm not used to it. And additionally, I think that it kind of got masked. Like the softness got masked because honestly, like Penn State was pushing us around in the trenches.
Yeah.
But when you have JSN and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, it kind of is like, oh, look, we're just flying around. But we were a finesse team. Really similar to me, what it felt like was the 2014 Oregon team. Like they were a finesse team through and through. They had all these dudes skill position-wise. They were really fun to watch. The offense was moving. But in the trenches, they were just getting beat to hell. And that's what it looked like for us. And it was frustrating as a guy who I love safety play. And watching the safeties play that bad and having a safety out there at Ohio State that doesn't strike fear into anybody at all on the hit wise, it was bothersome. We were getting pushed around, and I don't know, man. I really hope that they can get it figured out this year because there's no reason that D line should have been getting pushed around like that. And additionally, I'm ready to kind of see the 4 sophomores take the field on the defensive line because I'd seen enough last year.
Yeah, and I think too, I'll even touch on that, the whole finesse thing. I think, it's almost like at times it felt we wanted to be something that Ohio State never really has been. And I think you combine that with coaches that, let's be honest, were over their head a little bit. Mm-hmm. You look on the defensive side, I don't think any coaches knew what they were doing on that side of the ball. Like, I think they were throwing guys out there saying, hey, Stover makes sense because at least he can hit somebody, right? And it's right. Like, he can. Like, he's a dude that's going to lay punches. But I look on the offensive side, like, if you take away the 3 receivers and you take away and you rely on Henderson, can he get the job done, right? Yeah. Or like we don't know these things because it was that or you're dead, right? And it's kind of like when you talk about balance, right? In the NFL and college football, you need balance. And my thing is sometimes I felt we didn't lean enough on that pound and ground game. Like just drill it, like run the ball, because like there would be times where they would throw passes incomplete, punt the ball, and it's like, dude, it's 3rd and 2. Where's the old Ohio State where you line up in the eye? I know it's not to do anymore is line up in the eye, but dude, just power run it. You have Rossi, let him lead the way, just power run it. And I think I'm interested to see what Ryan Day, because Ryan Day, I'm telling you, I heard this many times, is he does not take well to like people talking bad about his team, and he holds that. He won't verbalize it, but he holds that. And I'm really interested to see what kind of takes place here in the next, few months as we lead up to the beginning of the season.
Yeah, the run game was so finesse heavy, man. Like, for all the football nerds out there, we ran stretch over 70% of our run plays. Like, that's just not a very good run play. Like, it's fine. I shouldn't say it's not a very good run play. It just doesn't breed nastiness because you're not pulling a guard, you're not getting linemen moving downhill, and you're not going to run stretch with two tight ends out there. So that was alarming to me, and I think the fix for that was to bring Justin Fry in. Now, Justin Fry and Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly gets an interesting rap because he's kind of known as a guy that's likes a lot of the finesse stuff. But in the 2019 Clemson game, it was 2020 Clemson game when we ended up getting them back. One of the things that Ryan Day went and got with Chip Kelly on run fit. And then we saw in that Clemson game like some real power running. And then we completely got away from it last year. Now, Justin Fry, who worked for Chip Kelly, was also the offensive line coach and run game coordinator, did a lot of work with Day at Boston College. That year, they had Andre Williams, a power back, go for 2,000 yards, and out of Boston College, become a Heisman finalist. So I think Ryan Day is making the adjustment because I don't think he's the expert on the run game like he wants to be. But I think a guy like Justin Fry, who was under him at Boston College and then under Chip Kelly at UCLA, is that guy. And I know Zach raves about kind of the nastiness that comes with a Justin Fry running attack. So I think that fixes that. And then additionally, I like Rossi a lot. I like to see Rossi out there more, and I would like to see him out there with Stover, if it is Stover, or with Royer, and because I think if you load him up on one side and then get a lineman moving downhill, that'll just really help Traven Henderson, and then that'll help Mayan Williams. Like, I hated how much we ran Mayan Williams stretch. Like, I love Mayan.
He's
I think
bowling ball.
Exactly. Let Mayan be Mayan, and Mayan's not running stretch.
No.
Like the stuff that we saw him do early on against Minnesota when he took that one around the edge and housed it, Travion could do that too. But I want Mayan between the tackles. I want Mayan behind a pulling guard. I want Mayan in a heavy set. And then I want to work out of play action when you're play actioning something that's more power oriented rather than something that's stretch. I think that'll help our pass game even more, to be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, Josh, I mean, you're a Florida fan, so obviously you can see how great the run game is down there in Florida. I'm sorry. I had to bring that
Florida
up.
fan, dude. I was going back to, I was watching the 2007 Florida LSU game.
That was
So I was looking for this celebration because I don't know how much you guys, not to get super off topic, I don't know how much you guys know about the Tim Tebow years down there. Josh, I'm sure you know a good amount.
I mean, that's why I'm a Florida Gators fan.
Got you.
In the Tebow era, and I
love Tebow. I just don't like Florida.
So I don't know how tapped in you were, but during that 07, you probably listened on Friday when Zach was talking about it. During that 07 year, I guess like Tebow's number got leaked on message boards, like the week of the LSU game. And everybody was calling Tim Tebow from LSU, just blowing his phone up so he couldn't use his phone for a week. So I guess after one of the touchdown celebrations, he like did the dial phone in the in the LSU stadium and picked up the phone.
Yeah, I don't remember. At least from watching it, I'll have to look into that too. That's crazy.
Yeah, super crazy. So they said he couldn't use his phone the entire week because it was just like thousands of calls and thousands of messages coming through, and his phone like froze up. He was so mad.
Talk about a great guy, though. By the way, talk about a great guy. Tim Tebow's a great guy. Yeah. Dude, a great, solid dude.
Percy Harvin too, man.
Percy,
player. Like, I hear Zach talk all the time about how great Percy Harvin is. Like, the first time I ever heard him say like Percy Harvin's the best football player he's ever seen, I was like, really? Because I mean, this is 11, 12-year-old Josh, like not fully developed in the football mind yet. Watching Percy just like a smaller, fast receiver that I mean is really good, but it's like the best ever. Like and this is in an era where I've saw guys like Vince Young and Reggie Bush, and it's just like Percy Harvin though. And I mean, I see highlights now, and it's like, yeah, I mean, Percy was better than what I remember, but it's like, man, I kind of wish I could have seen him like
today, like as our age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's almost like, it's weird because I think about Ted Ginn or Chris Gamble in that way at Ohio State, like guys that back then I was like, wow, these guys are doing some cool things. Now I look at them like Chris Gamble played both ways pretty much his whole career. Like the dude played both ways.
Like,
if you tell someone that now,
like
no.
starting corner and then receiver, like on third down for like trick plays. He was a starting receiver and starting corner, never leaving the field.
I love the story that Zach talks about, like after Percy got traded to Seattle and they're all in the office. And I don't know if you've heard this story, Josh, but Pete Carroll calls Urban Meyer and it's like, yo, like I need some help, man, because Percy's not practicing. Percy's punching players. Percy's cussing out staff members. Like, I need to get him on the field, but Percy goes missing all the time and we don't know what to do. Yeah. And it's like, we need him.
One of my favorite stories I hear him tell too.
Yeah, I love it. He's like, I need him because like he legitimately is the best football player I've seen, like the best in space, the best at creating space, the best skilled player I've seen, like better than Reggie Bush. And it's like for me in my head, Reggie was always the best college running back ever.
Yeah.
Like incredibly gifted. So for him to call Urban and say that and need Percy this bad after, first of all, Percy was not at the peak of his career. This was, obviously later on Percy. And I mean, he's breaking players' jaws in the locker room, and yet you need him out there in a time where you would think of the NFL, it's like we cut guys loose, especially receivers. Receivers, the one position we see, there's 3,500 guys who are 6 foot and can run a 4.4. Like, we don't need him, but they needed him. And so for me, that kind of is eye-opening for Pete Carroll to make that call. Cause I mean, Reggie Bush should have won 2 Heismans. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's never been taken away, but that's besides the point. But no, my question for you is, Kris, is you look at what Ohio State's doing, in off the field, right? In recruiting. And Josh knows we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I was just raving on the fact that Brian Hartline might be the GOAT of recruiting. I mean, just this man goes out there and says, hey, you want to come and sit for a year, maybe 2 years? Hey, you're a 5-star. I don't care. You're going to learn how to be a wide receiver and in the NFL and in college football. My question to you is, do you think that this is is it going to be possible to keep Brian Hartline? I know we know he's a Buckeye and we know he lives and dies that. And what would it take, do you think, to keep him on there so that we can keep this train rolling and that this will continue to be one thing that we have here at Ohio State?
So what I know right now, for fact, this isn't rumor mill, this isn't anything, but I know for fact, at least in the next 2 years, Brian Hartline does not want the pressures of being anything more than a pass game coordinator and a wide receivers coach. He doesn't want the spotlight. Breaking news.
Right here.
He doesn't want the spotlight. He doesn't want kind of the pressure that comes with it. And it's the similar mold that I heard about Brent Venables down in Clemson. Now, Brent Venables had some stuff, off the field stuff that he, was getting into here and there, and then eventually ended up being the head coach at Oklahoma. But right now, I know for a fact he doesn't want that. Now, additionally, speaking about, his recruiting prowess, guys, I don't know how many receivers you think he's missed out on, but I think it's 2 total since he's been there. Including them being able to get or 3 actually. And they've been able to get his number 1 every single year, which I don't remember ever being done. The 3 receivers that Brian Hartline's missed out on is Zachariah Branch, Bo Collins, and the kid that went to Clemson. I can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah. I know you're talking about.
The other kid that went to Clemson. Troy Stellato. Those are the 3 he's missed out on, and all of those guys went somewhere else after someone higher on Brian Hartline's board committed to Ohio State. So we'll start with that. Additionally, right now, him and Corey Dennis know that the best way for them to elevate their stock is to stay with Ryan Day as long as possible. Ryan Day has made both of their jobs, both of their careers. First of all, it's a cheat code, because a Ryan Day offense is going to guarantee those guys get touches and yards. Second of all, Zach has talked about it, and Zach has had several long conversations with Day. Brian schemes guys open better than anybody else he's ever been around. And one of the guys that he used to give a lot of credit to was a guy like Tom Herman, who did a really good job scheming guys open who maybe weren't great receivers, and a guy like Dan Mullins, who he was good. I like Dan, so I don't want to be too hard on him. I know Josh probably doesn't like Dan.
Sitting there like, oh geez.
I'm sitting here like, what do you have good to say about Dan Mullins?
Like as an offensive like understanding scheme, like Zach has talked about how good Dan was. Now he also talked about how weird Dan is and how he never expected him to connect with anybody because he's just a really weird dude. But those are the 3 guys that scheme receivers open, and Sark as well. And so Brian Hartline knows. Brian Hartline can bring whoever he wants in. As long as the guy's a top 250 guy, no matter who you are, if you are starting at Ohio State, you can go get 1,000 yards because that's how good Ryan Day is. And on the Corey Dennis front, what quarterback doesn't want to come to Ohio State? Like they all want in.
You got the most loaded receiving room in the country you're going to be throwing
to. We take that back. Remember, Quinn Ewers came for his $1 million and then decided to just jump ship. But that was the only one that was kind of more about money basis.
And even he wanted to play for Ohio State.
Like, I mean, he played a snap. I mean,
he played 2 snaps. I'll give you that.
Sorry,
but but Quinn Ewers is a guy we should have never had a shot with. Like guys, like I swear to you, like I've seen the inside of Quinn Ewers' bedroom. It was painted burnt orange. Like he should have never been at Ohio State. So, like, the fact of the matter is that the wide receiver recruiting is helping the quarterback recruiting, and the quarterback recruiting is helping the wide receiver recruiting, and Ryan Day's offense is keeping everything at an all-time high. Brian Hartline knows if he goes somewhere else, it's not going to be this easy. It's not going to be this fruitful. Like, if he, like, say he goes to Notre Dame and gets the offensive coordinator job at Notre Dame, who's coaching quarterbacks there?
Who is
like who do you trust more as a quarterback developer there?
Yeah, I mean,
like, it would have to be like the OC at Texas or something.
Yeah, I mean, but also too, I think on that too, I think it's development wise. I think receivers are seeing what Chris Olave did. Chris Olave came in as a guy that was found on a, like, it wasn't even like, hey, he's, a number 5-star receiver that's just out there, those things. So you see a guy like him, and, I even think you think about Jameson Williams, like this man decided to just go, hey, I'm not going to get enough touches, which, by the way, I think he still would have got quite a few touches. But
he would have been just fine. He would have got so many touches, man.
But I look at that, and I look at all these guys that have developed, and it's like, if you're Brian Hartline sitting in your living room, how are you going to tell a guy no? How are you going to look at him and go, hey, you just had 2 receivers go in the top, 15 picks. I'm going to have to pass on this. Like, you don't say that. Like, you don't. And look at Fleming, right? A guy who's a 5-star, who's a stud, by the way. People keep telling me, I have friends that all the time, Michigan fans especially, they're like, oh, he's a nobody. I'm like, dude, this dude's a 5-star receiver that's been injury plagued. If he's healthy, this dude is going to be, after, Jackson Smith and Njigba leaves, this dude will be the feature guy. Like, just wait. Just wait.
I mean, he was the number 1 overall player according to ESPN. Like, the kid can play, kid can fly. Like, and he's never had a healthy shoulder. Like, he's never been able to lift his shoulder, his right shoulder, I believe, above his head. Like, even as he became the number 1 player, like, it's been that messed up for that long. Like, if you get on the field, it's over. And it's funny because, like, Ohio State wide receiver recruiting has been so different than Alabama. Like, Alabama has taken 4 transfer wide receivers.
That's what Josh said. That's what Josh was talking about a couple weeks ago.
Crazy, man. Like, not too long ago, this Bama receiver room had 4 receivers, all recruited, no transfers, that all became first-round picks. And it has now turned into, like, East Mississippi Community College, basically. Like, all these new guys coming in because they can't bring anybody in. It's like, what the heck's going on? Like,
has Nick Saban fell behind the game? That's the question.
Has Nick Saban lost his edge, or like this Weaver dude that's the receiver coach just can't get it done? Just got maybe lucky. I don't know.
I mean, like, I think, is it Wiggins, the wide receiver coach there now?
Wiggins, my bad. I knew it was a W name.
Yeah. So at this point, Nick Saban's kind of sounding the alarm. Like, Nick Saban said after the national title game, he was like, man, we had dudes that think they were good enough to play, and they were not good enough to play in the championship game. Like, the opportunity was there. And, like, the Ajayi Hall kid, he dropped a touchdown pass in the title game, and he dropped, like, 2 first-down plays. And Nick Saban sounded the alarm and kind of offered up at that point that they're going to be hitting the portal so hard. And Nick Saban is recruiting and pushing that room like he doesn't intend on being there for more than 4 or 5 years. Because you could do these little shot in the arm and it's like steroids, man. Yeah. It's like transfer wide receivers like steroids. You could do a little bit here, you could do a little bit there, but for the long-term success of the program, it's not going to work out. But I don't think Nick Saban cares about the long-term success of the program. He cares about next year, and then after next year, worries about the year after, where Brian Hartline is building a foundation with the room. And so that's kind of what separates the two. But he's going to stay at Ohio State for a long time. He doesn't want the spotlight, and he understands how easy his job has become here at Ohio State.
And I think, too, like, his own kids, right? Like, growing him up in the Ohio State program. But also, I think back to that, the Campbell, McLaurin's, that room that, if you remember, very talented, stayed 4 years, stayed 5 years, said, and that's the culture that almost goes back to the Jim Tressel days, the Urban Meyer days, where it's like, hey, you're going to play 4 years, or at least three, but mostly you're going to try to stick at 4, because unless you're a top 5 pick, most of these guys, unless you're a Garrett Wilson, a CJ Stroud, these kind of guys, stick it out. It doesn't hurt you. It makes you better, because most of these guys, we know, they think they're ready. They go out early. They get drafted in the 6th round. They don't get drafted. And now they're sitting there going, man, I can make money now. Why am I leaving? Right? Like this thing. And so I'm very interested to see how this keeps going, because I think Brian Hartline is one of those guys that I remember watching him as a player, which is just weird to me. But, and now just seeing how he coaches these guys, and like, you look at even Marvin Harrison Jr., right? A guy that was highly recruited, but not a guy that was like, hey, a top 5 dude out of the class.
Mm-hmm. I believe he was out of the top 150.
Yes.
He wasn't a top 150
this guy,
kid.
But his dad said this is the best place for him because it fits what he needs. And you saw him go in that Rose Bowl and said, this is my time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Garrett Wilson, you're gone. Olave, you're gone. This is my time. And I'm telling you, and I've said this all summer as Michigan fans keep hounding me. I said, you get ready for that day, because I will tell you that there are going to be receivers. There's a quarterback, there's a running back, there's an offensive line, there's a defense that is very hungry, and they're going to be scary. And I'm sorry, Michigan, you can't even get a dude that has the last name of a legendary coach. And that's what's it's so frustrating. And if you're a Michigan fan, right? Like I have friends, I have family that are Michigan fans, and they won't talk to me right now because they know I'm not telling you anything that's not true. Like you can't. Your coach decided on signing day that he's flirting with the NFL. When you
publicly,
NFL,
like very publicly,
like Ryan Day has always said, anytime people ask him, no, I'm staying. Nope, I'm here. This is where I'm at. Brian Hartline, same thing. These guys are like, hey, we're here. If you're a recruit and you're looking at Michigan, like, why the heck would I go there? He's a nutcase. Why would I go there? Right? Like
Dante Moore just left too. Oregon.
Dante Moore just left
from Detroit, MLK. Like,
and you know how
Michigan.
You know when they offered him?
When
he was in the 7th grade, Jim Harbaugh went and offered him personally,
and they lost him.
They lost
him.
Oh, they lost him.
Hell.
They offered him personally. He was in the 7th grade.
First off, I wish I was offered in 7th grade, man.
Yeah.
That'd be a popularity boost right there.
Yeah. Just ask Tathan Martell.
Yeah. Speaking of like Tate and guys like that, it seems like all these guys that get offered that early or like get an offer, like it's trash. Never to that school, right? Or they end up just being trash. Yeah, but they never end up seeming to go to that first.
Or
school.
Also, I mean, by the way, speaking of like 14-year-olds, that 14-year-old that's been on social media that's 6'1", 295. I'm sorry, if I was 6'1", 295 at 14, what the heck are they feeding this kid?
Yeah.
Kid looks like a grown man.
If my kid was in school in the same district playing football, I would immediately pull him out of football. I would immediately tell him to go play table tennis. Like, we're not stepping foot on the football field. You can go be a water boy. There's no shame in that. You can go be a ball boy. You can go play soccer. But the last thing or we're just going to pull the whole KD thing and we're going to transfer you to that school because I do not want that dude hitting you. Like, straight up. Yes. Like, there's not a chance I'm letting anyone that I care about, cousin, brother, sister, anybody on the other side of someone like that, man.
Dude, that is
14
scary.
years old, man.
Dude, at 14, I was shaving off my mustache that was ugly. Like, like that's
when I was 14, I didn't even have any hair anywhere but my head. There was nothing to even shave.
Yeah, man. Oh man, dude, Chris Henry Jr. too, I believe, is only 14, and he looks like he could be playing college ball already based on
massive.
His build.
Freaks.
Dude,
freaks everywhere, man. These kids are ridiculous.
Like when I was that age, I weighed maybe $125 on a good day, like soaking wet $125. I played post in basketball at 6'2", 125. What am I going to do at 6'2", 125 playing center?
14-year-old Josh was like 5 feet, 100 pounds even.
Yeah, man.
Dude,
it's crazy. I was a little guy. I do want to ask about receivers, guys. I want to ask you. I'm kind of taking this. Bringing it back.
You're just used to being Zach had taken all those things, so you gotta.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys about Marv. You think Marv has what it takes to be number one on this team? Like Zach and I have talked about it a little bit, or do you think there's no way?
I said yes. It depends how they play it, scheming it wise, right? Like, is Jackson Smith going to play inside? If he plays inside, then but what do you consider number one? Because that's the thing. Because every like when I was
Who was the number one last year? Who's the number one last year, you think?
I feel like Garrett was.
It's just like I feel like Garrett was the best receiver, but Jackson Smith and Jigba had the most yards and touches. And I mean,
Chris Olave had the most
like
touchdowns.
First rounder that Olave has kind of seen his production go down, I think, each year, if my memory serves me correctly. But it's not like he's gotten any worse. It's just like these other guys just keep stepping up. And since Ohio State doesn't really feature a receiver or like try to target one receiver specifically, I feel like that opens the door for really anybody to be, I guess, that top target. But Yeah, that's an interesting point though about like what you would say is number one. Is
I would say though
touches or the way that they play in the offense.
I think though too, if you look at Jack Smith and Jigba, the reason why I would actually consider Jack Smith the number one is like look what he did in the Rose Bowl. Like when Wilson wasn't there, Olave wasn't there. Who did Stroud feel most comfortable with? I look at quarterbacks. Who are they most comfortable with? Who can be the production, right? Like when I was coaching high school football a few years ago, our head coach was always like, you know, this is my number one guy. And we're like, yeah, but he gets like 4 touches a game. He's like, yeah, but he draws the most attention. He's the one that causes double teams. He's the one that when he does get the ball, it's scary for the other team. So that's where I think it depends. Like Josh said, it depends on, I think, where you're at, right? Like, are you a team that focuses only on Jack Smith and Jigba, or do you want Harrison to be that guy? But then you also go like, but you also forget about Fleming and how many other dudes that are you're lining up. So, and Buka as well, who we barely saw really last year because, I mean,
the room was so loaded.
Yeah. And so that's what I would say.
It's interesting because like when I look at it and when I try to answer the question who the number one is, I go back to the Michigan game and like every time the game was on the line, or, you know, obviously we lost, the ball was going to JSN. Like every time everybody was covered, the ball was going to JSN. And also I think the number one for CJ last year was a little bit simpler because JSN played in the slot.
Yep.
Traditionally, team's third best corner play in the slot or safeties. So he's going to draw the most mismatches. I think when Garrett Wilson was in the slot like the year before, like he was the number one in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I am curious to see if they will try to move JSN outside and kind of have him do the Garrett Wilson role, where you know we've seen you play the slot, now we want to have you go play the X. But it's like there also has to be a guy good enough to want to bump somebody out like that. So I am curious. I think that if you
but who do you think is going to be the top 3? If you go list, like we obviously know JSN, you take him out of the picture. Who are the next 2 guys that you're like, these 2 guys are going to get the most touches after him?
So if you keep JSN in here, this is where Zach and I kind of differ. I think that if JSN stays in the slot, which I anticipate him to, I don't think Ibuka starts. I think Ibuka is a better slot receiver, and I think for the X and for the Z, I think you'd have Marvin at the X, because that's ideal. So the X is obviously the bigger receivers, the Michael Thomases of the world, the more physically gifted. Garrett played the X because he was a rare specimen, and just a rare specimen. And then at the Z, while Ibuka is fantastic and probably a very good player, I think at the Z you have to put Fleming at least to start. I think they'd rotate. Just Fleming fits the Z so perfectly. Like he's your ideal out there. So that's where I'm at with those. But again, if you do want to move JSN to the Z, then you put Ibuka in there at the slot, and then you could see him have a huge drop. So can you
imagine that speed if you put him? Oh my word,
it'd be ridiculous. And then like the trump card for Ryan Day could be if you trot those 3 out there, and then you also trot out G. Scott Jr. And then it's like, okay, what are you gonna do? Like, are you going to personnel match and throw another DB out there?
By the way, Travion Henderson's in the backfield, who also can be a receiver.
Exactly. So it's like if you want a personnel match, if G. Scott's out there, what do? Do you put a linebacker on G. Scott, or do you put a safety? Because if you put a safety, you have to believe that at this point, G. Scott's put on enough weight to plant a safety trying to help in run support. So then you flip to a run play with Travion. Yeah. If you put a linebacker out there, there's not a single linebacker that's not in the NFL currently that can stay in front of a true wide receiver is where we're at. So
yeah.
I think the next 2 will be Fleming and Marv. And I don't think Marv will have a bigger year than JSN because of the slot idea and because of just proximity to the quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see Stroud's numbers. That's all I'm going to say. I can't wait to see his numbers.
It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. I go back and forth because it's going to be crazy, but his overall yards might go down, I think, because I think we'll be in more blowouts this year. Like last year, the defense was so bad that there weren't enough blowouts. I think this year there'll be enough blowouts to where we'll see, Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, and we'll see a good amount of handoffs as well. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Kris.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. So we've just established how many weapons Ohio State has to go around for CJ, but I'm wondering if this Ohio State receiver room could produce 3 1,000-yard receivers, because last year they were so close to doing it. If Olave and Wilson play that Rose Bowl, it happens. It doesn't happen too often in football. Like it's only happened 5 times in the NFL. And the only time I know of in college was the 2007 Hawaii football team with Colt Brennan. But I think this year, like some might say, like, there's a lot more weapons, or there could be more blowouts, so maybe more runs in the second half. But I look at it like Ohio State's my national championship favorite to me. So to me, that means that they're going to play 3 extra games with the championship, or the Big Ten championship, and the 2 playoff games. And since they were so close last year, like, got to figure JSN's going to get 1,000 again. I think Marvin Harrison's good enough to get that 1,000. And then it's just kind of like, will that next 1,000 be Fleming or Ibuka? And I mean, CJ's got a year under his belt now. So, I mean, that's another year of experience. It's like death beam to your head, as you would ask Zach. Will Ohio State's receiver room have 3 1,000-yard receivers, or is there just too much guys, too many mouths to feed here?
They won't have 3 1,000-yard receivers. They'll have 2. Marv is going to go over 1,200, and JSN's going to go over 1,400, and then Ibuka and Fleming are going to split. So it's going to be like something like 700, 600, 700, 500 for those guys, because they're going to try to keep both of them happy and get them on the field. And they're going to have to rotate receivers, because at some point Brian Hartline's going to have to realize that when you don't rotate receivers, guys get dead legs late in the year. Yeah. And we saw, it's so funny because of late in the year and what you saw from a guy, Garrett Wilson, people thought Garrett Wilson was going to run a slow 40. But it's like once his legs got some juice underneath of him, and he was good, he ran in the 4.3s. But he wasn't playing at a 4.3 speed because his legs were blew out, because he was on the field at all times. So I think that's a lesson that they've learned, and that I know Mickey Marotti is tapped in on. So float that. So we're going to be rotating that third receiver, and too much so to where that they won't get 3 1,000-yarders. I would love it though. I want it. Hell, I'd rather have 4. Like, give us 4,000-yard receivers. He's going to throw for 4K. So,
and dude, since you brought up Mickey, fun fact about Mickey. I've been to the NFL Combine a couple times to interview like some of the bigger prospects up there, and I always try to talk to some of the Ohio State guys. And out of the 3 or 4 Buckeyes that I've talked to in the 2 years that I've made the trip up there, all of them say, when I ask them the question, what makes Ohio State different, they always start off with Mickey Marotti. That's like the first guy they mention.
Why do you think they pay him?
Meyer or Ryan Day or any kind of scheme or culture. It was always Mickey Marotti, and I just thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. He's right. I mean, if Urban Meyer, that's Urban Meyer's one rule. If he ever got back into coaching, the pillar of the team, the personality of your football team is absorbed from the strength and conditioning coach. If Urban Meyer ever got back into coaching at the college level, the one person he would need would be Mickey Marotti. He tried and taken Stampert a year ago when he went to Jacksonville, because that's a guy from mixed program, kind of want to mix disciples. Didn't work out. If he ever coached in college again, he would need Mickey Marotti.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think, I look at the toughness, right? I think there will be a toughness this year in the defense. We talked about the defense. I want to touch on that real quick. I personally think that you're going to see this defense. This has been my prediction with my dad, with people people I've talked with football wise. I've always said the defense need to get better. That was my thing. I think it's going to get better. I've said that. My thing is, I think this team could really keep teams if they play what we think they can on paper. You look at this team, they have a lot more talent on the outside as well on the inside. I think they can keep teams under 16, 15 points. Hopefully, right? If all goes well. My question to you is, and Josh can touch on this too, we both kind of talked about, he said this question to me, and I'm like, I like this, I'm going to keep this. Which defensive end will have more sacks, JTT or Sawyer?
Yeesh.
Or will it be someone that we don't know? I mean, because that seems to happen on Ohio State's defense all the time.
I think Sawyer will have more sacks than JTT, but I think, I think Sawyer will have more. It depends on who rotates with Harrison.
Exactly.
One of the two is going to rotate with Harrison. I'm trying to think of who that could be.
I feel like JTT, on the depth chart at least, is probably ahead right now based on last season's performance. But Sawyer, was so highly ranked in recruiting, and it's will he make the huge jump from year 1 to year 2 here, or is he going to end up not being?
Will Harrison ever show up to be good?
Yeah.
No, I'm out on Harrison.
I
think that JTT came out of high school closer to a finished product based on kind of the high-level coaching and high-level strength and conditioning he got out of Washington. Jack Sawyer never fully dedicated his time to defensive end till last year. Guys, he was a quarterback in high school.
He was a freak quarterback.
Yeah, a freak quarterback, and he played basketball, but so did JTT. So I think that Sawyer has more room to take a significant leap. And if you look at just traits and tools, Like, Jack Sawyer's so freaky, guys. Like, his torso, the long legs, the long, violent arms, like, keeping up with the seniors and the strength stuff. Like, he just has more upside, I would say. And I think it'll finally be unleashed. Additionally, with Knowles, he also fits the mold for the perfect Leo. Like, he can stand up and rush. He can line up anywhere. He's, like I said, so violent with his hands. We saw in the spring game last year, he had like 4 or 5 sacks.
It's like a Bosa. It's like a Bosa.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like a Bosa to me. He just didn't have the high level strength and conditioning for as long as guys like JTT and even Nick and Joey, because at St. Thomas Aquinas and their dad being an NFLer, like, they came to campus fed well, and they didn't have to worry about their weight because, you know, they weren't playing quarterback as well. So I think Jack will have more sacks this year, but I also think Tyleek is going to have more sacks than Harrison on the flip side.
Yeah,
Harrison, just so you guys know.
Harrison has got frustrated me so much because of how hyped I was, an Ohio kid. After Bosa's left, we're like, okay, this is our guy, and then he's just kind of tanked.
He's a freak athlete. Like, I watched him play receiver at Old Tangy. He just can't bend. He has no bend to him, so it's frustrating.
And you have Denzel Burke on the outside, who I can't wait to watch this year. Dude's just a freak. For a guy that kind of was not known, he just turned out to be a really good player.
For a guy who was rated as an athlete coming out of high school.
Like,
nobody knew what he was going to. They got into camp. They said, you can play what you want to play. We want to start you with slot corner and see what you can do. He said, forget the slot corner stuff. I want to play outside. Like, I can stay in front of anybody.
Normally athletes just go to Florida. Oh, I'm sorry. Another one.
Hey, Josh, you have to be excited for Florida though, man. Like, the Webb kid that you guys landed. Like,
I think Billy Napier is doing so much more than like what Mullen did like in his last season. Like, so far Napier's got, at least last time I checked, 2 of the top 15 kids in this upcoming class, which Mullen was never even touching 5 stars.
We know Mullen didn't like to recruit. Like, Mullen did not want to recruit.
He didn't. He couldn't keep the kids in Florida either. And I mean, in just 1 year, Napier's already recruiting the state of Florida better than what Mullen was in his final season. So it's like, we are in such a talent-rich state. There's no excuse for us to win less than 8 games a season, in my opinion.
You know, Ohio State just goes down there and takes them, but that's fine. It's fine with me.
And everybody can have Florida kids, man. Like, we don't want them, apparently.
Dude, it's so true.
Like, ideally, the state of Florida should already be hard enough to recruit for any of the schools, like Florida, Miami, Florida State. Like, all the top kids, like, those 3 schools should be competing to get them. And right now, for all 3 of them, actually, that's just – it's not the case. Tough. It's a bad time to be a Florida college football team.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be crazy. And I think this is perfect swing into the state of the not only the Big Ten, but the NCAA. We were hearing a lot of news out of the ACC. We're hearing news out of the Big 12, Pac-12, all that fun stuff. And my question for both of you guys is what is happening? As someone who I have a friend who doesn't really watch like college sports, and he looked at me and goes like, is this just like the NFL, but like with non-NFL players? And I'm like, well, that's a great question.
It's really getting there, isn't it? Like, doesn't it look like we're going to end up with 2
conferences.
mega conferences that end up being like the AFC, NFC, which would be the Big Ten and the SEC? Like, it really feels like with all the movement that's eventually what it's going to become.
By 2025, it's going to be completely different because 2025, the college football playoff contract is done. And so they'll have to rework things then. And there's been no talks to get it done, mainly because the SEC, when negotiations started about, expanding the playoffs, they're like the way things went, they were unhappy. So, like, you know what? Like, we know when that expires in 2025, we'll have the chips to make sure that we can have our own playoff. And that's what getting Oklahoma and Texas did. And then that kind of forced the Big Ten's hand. Cough, cough. Thank you, Gene Smith, for making a move.
Smith.
Yeah, finally got it done. So no, I mean, college football is the Wild West. I mean, you got high schoolers getting 7-figure deals. You got
dude, not even played yet. I just think it's mind-boggling.
No, Nico, that boy Nico is making 117,000.
He's out here wearing pajamas at like
7-on-7
or wherever the heck that camp was, just throwing bombs like lasers, and
they offered him 110,000 a month.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than my college loan.
And call Nico.
I know. I need to call Nico. But
like, if I was making 110,000 a month, guys, I would be so ridiculous with the money. Like, I would be like, honestly, like, no, like, I'm ridiculous with it now, and I don't even make that much. But I would just be I would have 1,000 in cash with me at all times just to give to somebody. Like, I feel like I would be just an absolute demon.
You're like Mr. Beast of the radio. That's what you'd be.
Straight up.
That's what you'd be. But my question is, though, is what do you see, Kris? Do you see there being, like, let's say a north and a south, or like, something like that, where there's, because what do you think is going to happen to the rest of the Big 12 teams, the rest of the Pac-12 teams, the ACC, in basketball, the Big East, some of these teams, like what happens? Like that's what I want to, what's your grasp on this? I know you and Zach talk about this too, but what's your grasp on it? What do you think?
I think you're going to see the two super conferences, and the playoff is going to turn into, conference title game here, conference title game there. Winner of each goes and plays. I think the Big 12 is done. I think the SEC will absorb most of the football schools that they can. And I think at some point there's going to be a buy-in to get into each of the conferences. I think once each of the conferences kind of, settle on things, get who they want, I think from there on out, other schools can apply each year to get in, but there's going to have to be a buy-in, a requirement, a revenue requirement just to get in. It's going to be like two clubs. Because everyone's trying to protect their TV deals at this point.
So you mean Rutgers is very thankful they're in the Big Ten already?
Yeah, they're thankful they're in the New Jersey market, because that's the only reason they're in, because of that TV deal.
Warren has saved his butt because of what he did a few years ago that we'll never forgive him for. Because I think that cost Ohio State a chance for a national title. I truly believe that.
Absolutely.
And I think he saved him. I think, again, it's Gene Smith, not him. But you now have, if you're the Big Ten, you have the LA market, you have the New Jersey market, and you have Ohio State and Michigan in your center. Well, Ohio State. And it's, to me, the SEC, I think, with the whole talk with the ACC, it's like SEC is looking like, oh crap. We have to now compete against the LA market. And there's thoughts, and my thought is that Oregon, Washington, at some point here in the next few weeks or months, will switch to the Big Ten. I just don't see how it's not possible. I think what's going to happen is the teams that don't want to be in these conferences, according to an FCS coach from Idaho, I forget his name, said that it's the most pure is the FCS because, Idaho left the FBS to go to the FCS. So obviously it's so pure. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of these small divisions that it's almost going to be like a minor leagues, if in some cases with the new pretty much free agency. Like, I've told Josh this, there needs to be some type of control on this whole like craziness, because right now it's just, like you said, the Wild West. It's like, all right, who's up for a debate? Like, that's what it is. And it truly is.
I think the Big Ten is going to look. I know that they want Georgia Tech, they want the Atlanta TV market, and they want to and that will be the first like real bite into the SEC market. I also know that Clemson does not want to join the SEC. That is not something they view as valuable. Unless Duke, North Carolina, and Virginia all go with them all to the SEC East, just because they don't want to have to go play the SEC Sharks.
Dabo doesn't want to go play them. No, not anybody, not the team. No. It's Dabo.
Good old Dabo.
Ohio State's the 11th best team in the country. Remember, that's where that's all at.
I can't stand that man, dude. I can't stand that man. I'm a Georgia Tech fan, so I used to love when they used to get beat by them every year. Like, I used to love when Georgia Tech was whooping them with a triple option trot out there, throwing 2 passes a game, going crazy. But no, it's going to be 2 super conferences, and the teams I'm really interested in see where they end up. I'm interested to see where Cincinnati ends up, because at some point I think the Big 12 is gone.
I think the Big 10 takes up Cincinnati. It's got to.
Well, they keep Cincinnati's trying to get into the Big 10 3 times now.
I think it's because what I can grasp from people that go to Cincinnati and things like that, it's just like their size of their university. I don't know if it's like big enough. Like I don't know if they haven't hit certain marks, because if you look at all the other schools in the Big Ten, Rutgers might be the smallest. Northwestern's the smallest, but also Northwestern's academics are super, super high. So I think that plays a factor in that whole thing as well.
I know
snobs in here get in the way. Like, oh, you got A-.
They've met the requirements to join the Big Ten. They've met all the requirements several times, but it keeps getting blocked. They've tried 3 times now. When they made their move to the Big 12, well, it's been Gene Smith. Gene Smith.
Of course, it's Gene Smith.
We're not letting you guys in.
We gotta love Gene and we gotta hate Gene at the same time.
Right. Well, they don't want someone else to compete with Ohio State for Ohio kids. And so they keep blocking it. And so it's like, that could be you're going to get some weird team alignments. Like, you're going to get like Cincinnati in the
USC,
SEC.
But USC and UCLA is already weird. They have to travel freaking 4,000, not 4,000. It's me traveling 4,000, but it's like traveling, you're 3 hours difference of time. So
Yeah.
you imagine the schedules of those kids going to Rutgers.
Mhm.
And
You
then
got
to,
back-to-back road
let's say
games, Rutgers and then Ohio State. Like,
oh my word, you just stay on the road. Just stay on the road.
you just
They're
stay
making
there.
money.
It's like a touring band. We're all pros at this point.
Yeah.
Like, it's goodness. But I'm interested to see, it's going to be crazy. Now, final question on this, Kris, do you like it or hate it?
Oh, I love it. I am a chaos kid, man. I grew up loving chaos. I love it, mainly because I'm not in it. But I am so here for it. I'm not a traditionalist. To me, as an Ohio State fan, like my number one rival's Clemson.
Stop. No.
No,
Oh.
I'm not a traditionalist at all. I love it. I'm here for it. Like, burn the whole
Ohio State
NCAA down.
matchup has been a lot more fun to watch the last 5 years than the Ohio State Michigan one.
Oh, I'll tell you. I don't know. It's not popular, guys. But come on, Ben. Come on, Josh. Like, you guys know. Like that is my like.
Oh, it's number two.
Rival.
It's number two, but ain't number one.
It's number one for me. It is definitely number one for me.
Dude, my dad's got a heart
I grew up
attack.
with a Michigan fan. Yeah, no, but I'm not a traditionalist. For me, like the things that sting the most was watching Trevor Lawrence running all over that.
That annoyed me. That did annoy me.
Trevor Lawrence looking like Mike Vick out there. Yeah, that was.
By the way,
coming.
that was not a bad hit on Lawrence. By the way, that I'm still going back to that. I'm sorry, it's not the ref's fault. We screwed up a lot of things in that game, but that changed the momentum of that game.
No,
stupid call, dumb call.
That loss hurt me more than last year's Michigan loss.
I will agree with you on that one. I will agree with you on that one.
So at that point for me, like, that's it. Like, that loss hurting me more than the Michigan loss means that in my own eyes, like, the team I watch every single week is Ohio State, and the second team I try to watch is always the rival. And for years, I'll maybe catch 4 or 5 Michigan games a year. I watch every single Clemson game, whether it's live or the next day. I watch every single Alabama game, whether it's live or the next day. And for me, that signals that my number one rival as an Ohio State fan is not Michigan, because I could care less what they do week to week.
And I think it also shows the state of Michigan, though. Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you say on that, Josh? Because I know you could probably attest being an Ohio kid.
I mean, honestly, just as an outsider, not being an Ohio State fan, it's like, I mean, you look at the Iron Bowl. Auburn will get Alabama every now and then, a lot more often than what Michigan's getting Ohio State. And I mean, I think you need that back and forth element. I mean, there might be one team that maybe not dominates, but wins more often than the other one in the rivalry, but you need a little bit of back and forth. And I mean, you get that in the Iron Bowl, and I think you kind of are getting that between Ohio State and Clemson. And up until this year, I mean, this past season, it's Michigan had nothing on Ohio State.
And looking broad scope, I love the sport so much, and I love rivalries, but the games I look forward to, I probably look forward more now to A&M versus Alabama than I do Alabama versus Auburn. Just
that's
because of that's what I'm saying. That's some of the stuff I look for. I look more forward to LSU Florida than I do Florida State.
I agree with that, yeah.
I look forward to kind of the stuff that has more in terms of recency, the offseason chatter, the jabs at each other. Up until last year, I never heard Jim Harbaugh take a jab at Ohio State. Up until the born on third base, but I had heard Dabo Sweet talk about 11th best team, and then I'd seen the cop out, and then I'd seen this and that, and then on the recruiting trail, Ohio State doesn't compete with Michigan on the recruiting trail. So to me, the interest and the rivalry, it's we lost out on Bo Collins to Clemson. I can't wait till they have to see us. And there's none of that with Ohio State and Michigan, because the kids that Michigan gets are kids that Ohio State didn't want. So there is no battle that goes down the stretch.
Right.
So when I look at rivalries and I look at importance and I look at what I value, I don't want to say I no longer care, but it takes a back seat. I want to see Penn State every year because we took Kyle McCord from them. We took Marvin Harrison Jr. from them. They got to see us. So that's what I like. And with Michigan, it's not there at all, because if you look at all Michigan starters, we didn't want any of them. You can look at their starting quarterback next year, their prime possession, J.J. McCarthy. He tried to commit to Ohio State. Ryan Day said, "You're not near the top of our board. We'll have to wait and see where the other quarterbacks go, or you'll have to get better." So out of spite, he committed to Michigan. So it's since we're not competing on the trail against each other, we've beaten you every time except for one time in the last X amount of years. And there's other schools that we compete with and have lost to. That's my rival, because that's what rivalry is more about, not rather than like historic and fake wars and the 10-year stuff or whatever. Because right now, Clemson's my rival, not Michigan.
Josh, what are your thoughts on that as a non-Ohio State Michigan fan?
I mean, it totally makes sense, man. Like, I see it. Like, I think Ohio State fans in their minds have elevated to like one of those like top 4 teams, right? So you got to be figuring like the playoffs is an expectation every year, and who's going to be staying your way to get to that national championship game? Most likely Clemson. Like, you're thinking bigger than just the Big Ten championship. Like, okay, we got to get past Michigan to get to the Big Ten championship to win it. Like, you're thinking like, okay, we're going to be in the playoffs every year. So who's going to be in our way of getting to that championship? Clemson. So I think that's the thinking now, because Michigan has been like that little of a threat these last couple of decades.
And it's like the kid factor of it. Like, if we have to get Bama at some point, like, that's who we lose recruiting battles to. So it's like, I want, like, as a fan, I was like, I want that kid to feel like he made a mistake by not coming to my school, because that makes me feel big and macho. But on the Michigan front, it's like, damn, like little Johnny Donut wasn't good enough to come here, and we just beat them down. But all right, on to the next. So for me, Michigan is a step to get where we need to get to. And up on the podium is going to be Clemson and Alabama. So that's who I watch every week for the rivalry. That's who I know we compete with on the football field. And honestly, like, once USC comes to the Big Ten, that's who I anticipate in the next 2 or 3 years will be the rival for Ohio State, not Michigan.
Especially for like I'd say people around our parents' age that grew up watching the Rose Bowl all the time with USC and Ohio State. Like, that was kind of like a secondary rivalry there for a while, and that's going to get brought back now, I think, with them both being in the same conference.
But even Lincoln Riley versus Ryan Day, that's
exactly
Lincoln Riley versus Ryan Day.
That's
too.
LA
highlight. Because we're going to be competing for the same quarterbacks. We're going to be competing for the same receivers, and the USC team, they're going to be very good. And I mean, these are the 2 guys that are viewed as the young quarterback gurus. Like, it's like Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh. There'll never be any debate on who's a better coach. But for as long as quarterbacks are being drafted in the first round, there will always be a debate of who's a better coach. Lincoln Riley or Ryan Day. And so I think that will replace kind of the rivalry aspect. And that's what we're going to see in the next 5 or 6 years. So that's where I'm at. I think Michigan's done. Until Brian Kelly gets fired from LSU, the same year that Jim Harbaugh gets fired from Michigan, and then Brian Kelly comes to Michigan, and then we got Franklin, Kelly, Riley, and Day all in the same conference. Then the rivalry could come close to getting back.
That's kind of funny. I didn't ever think about that, but now that you're saying it, I think Brian Kelly is a much better fit at Michigan than at LSU right now.
Look, he was a high school coach in Michigan. He's got Michigan ties. That's where he went to school. So, like, he went to school in Michigan. So, like, he is a Midwestern guy. I mean, even the way he recruits now, like the kids he's getting at LSU right now were all Midwest kids. Like that. Yeah, like, Brian Kelly belongs at Florida.
The talent that is in that state.
Like
not
even
you guys
trying
just
to.
Talked about on Menace not too long ago. Like Louisiana, like the top kids there do not leave. No, and they are going now.
Now they've been leaving, and they're swinging and missing. So no, Brian Kelly's going to end up at LSU, and then and only then, and personality-wise, like that's the kind of guy that Ryan Day is going to hate more than Harbaugh. Like Harbaugh's just a weird dude, but like hateable, like Brian Kelly is very hateable, especially if you're Ryan Day.
I think too, Brian Kelly, like I think his background's more in like line play, like between the trenches and stuff like that, and that's more I think what Michigan likes to do in terms of like the way that they've always played. Like they always have good linemen. That's kind of like I would guess the most that the talent that they put out in the NFL is on the line, offensively and defensively. They do really well running the ball, and then passing is just kind of like secondary. So I think Jimmy's kind of like had a hard time running the way that he would like to at Michigan, just because he's never had that quarterback.
No, you're right, and he's a scammer. But also, when Brian Kelly comes to Michigan, because it is going to happen, it's going to happen. The other rivalry,
it's been said here first.
Here first. The other rivalry that's going to be born because Notre Dame's going to join the Big Ten. It's going to be Marcus Freeman versus Kelly. Like that is what the sport needs.
Oh man, yes,
guys. Hey,
you heard it here first.
No, that is true, man.
I would even say, but I think this goes back to, and you said it earlier, Chris, and I heard it also from many other people. It's the state of Michigan. This is where they're at. They're at a place where I have Michigan like friends that like born and raised loved the tradition of Lloyd Carr, loved the tradition of what Michigan was. Even when Brady Joke was there. Sorry.
Even when Rich Rod
and Rich Rod. And even when they were there, you could tolerate it. But they said there is people that have seen Jim Harbaugh when he was a quarterback. and they see him now, and it's like they're so frustrated. And the state of Michigan is like, if you can't get Lloyd Carr's grandson, you can't get a kid from Detroit, from MLK, you can't get these kids to come to Michigan that grew up dying maize and blue. But Ohio State can go in and get a Jack Sawyer, can get these kids that are growing up in Ohio. Like, that just shows me right there that the state of Michigan is not where it was when Jim Tressel versus Lloyd Carr, 1 versus 2, the game of the century, the game that all of us growing up remember watching. You know, all these guys, Beanie Wells, you have all these different, even Tom Brady when he played for Michigan, like all these guys, like Tom Brady, you don't hear him talking about Michigan that much anymore. Like, you really don't hear him talking about it, right? Like,
nope, because he wouldn't dare.
Exactly. So I think that just shows that the state of where, I think not just where the Big Ten is headed, but really where Michigan is like fading. Like, they have.
Well, I'll add to that. Yeah, it's a little deeper than that, because one thing that Jim Harbaugh's done, and it's never going to make any national news, it's never going to kind of be a hot button thing, is he has lost the trust of coaches from Michigan, high school coaches. So like now, like these elite high schools in Michigan are sending their kids elsewhere. Like that's because they don't like Harbaugh and they don't trust Harbaugh. So if you are being negatively recruited by your own high school coach, telling you, you know what more, like if you care about your success moving forward, like we cannot have you go to Michigan. At that point, you're done, because you have to at some point build a pipeline from high schools to your school and then go out of there from there. But there's some high schools that I don't really want to name, but Jim Harbaugh's not even welcome in those high schools. So he can't even go visit a kid himself. It had to be Gaddis, or it had to be one of the other coaches. That's how much he's disliked among high school football coaches, who are the lifeblood of your program in most cases, especially in the trenches. Like whenever you look like offensive line play, like a lot of offensive linemen stay in state, and because that's a position that you can evaluate the best because of the closest by, and you kind of like that kind of nastiness is kind of something you want homegrown because it just means more. But Jim Harbaugh has lost the trust of high school coaches. They're not sending kids there. They're sending kids elsewhere. And really, I don't know, this win over Ohio State was kind of like rat's poison, because at some point, like it extended him 3 years, but they're going to get beat badly for 3 straight years. So I guarantee you they just wait for Brian Kelly to be available. And then you make the swap, and then you get Brian Kelly. That's what the Big Ten needs. Big Ten needs Brian Kelly back.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. I mean, it goes back to like parlaying success. Like you heard Zach say
momentum.
That Michigan hasn't been able to parlay this success from the Big Ten championship into the future. And then you look at, on the flip side, at Ohio State, Brian Hartline has 3 first-round receivers with J-Mo, Olave, and Wilson. And what does he do? He parlays that into getting Carnell Tate and Innis and Rogers.
Ridiculous.
And it just continues to get all these like 5-star kids, and it's just going to continue on and on and on.
From Florida. And they know that the corners they're facing in Michigan are not going to be from Florida. So they are good to go.
And I think and I want to get all your thoughts here before we move to the Browns topic. I want to get your thoughts. Kris, prediction for Ohio State this year. What is your prediction right now in July? What is your prediction for Ohio State this year? They're
not losing. They're not losing a ball game. They're winning the national title. Like, there's nobody in front of them right now. There's no quarterbacks that I'm afraid of. There is one player in the entire country I'm afraid of, but they're winning the whole thing. And I honestly, I'd bet my left leg on it, because that's how good I think they are. I think the only player that concerns me is Will Anderson. So we'll see Will Anderson versus Paris Johnson Jr. But I mean, Clemson with DJ Uiagalelei is not going to matter. Georgia, they're rolling with Johnny Donut at quarterback. They're done. Their best receiver said, "I'm out of here." Lincoln Riley and USC, they got this, transfer you, but they're going to be softer than Charmin in the trenches. We should run down their throats. So it's us and Bama, and this will be the only point. This is the year where Ryan Day takes that torch away from Nick Saban, and then we can come back next year on this podcast, and we can have a celebratory drink, and we can toast to it because they freaking did it, and Kris Drew called it on this show. So that's what I expect from Ohio State. There you have it.
And also you have the extra bonus that the fact that USC supposedly has a better quarterback than Stroud. The preseason polls have said they've had a better quarterback, which I think they're just, what are they smoking out there? I mean,
I just don't know how you can do that when Stroud was literally a Heisman candidate.
I don't know either, but whatever. We're here. It's just more fuel in the fire. That's all I got to say.
I don't even think Caleb Williams is a quarterback yet. I think he's an athlete playing quarterback.
Yes.
Like that's where I'm at with him. So no, it's cool because we'll see him in round 1 and we'll take his lunch money, and then it'll be going and taking the lunch money from Will Anderson. And if we can take that lunch money, we're good. We'll celebrate.
Josh, what do you got?
I mean, I'm with Kris on the national championship. I really don't see anything or any other team competing for that. Plus, it's just like a great revenge storyline that us in the media just love. So I'm going to go with national championship. I'm going to hesitate on going with undefeated, though. I don't know where that loss might come, but you never know, like, what could happen during a season, or like there could be a trap somewhere along the way that we don't know about yet. And yeah,
I think Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day's trap proof. I think Ryan Day is trap proof. I know that this is like
thing. Like, has even Alabama? Like, you look at Alabama, like the standard, right? Like, they've only had like 3 undefeated seasons the last decade. Like, it's just very, very, very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
I honestly firmly think that Ryan Day's trap proof. I think the teams we lost to last year, I think we deserve to lose to. Like, we didn't get beat. Like, we got beat by teams that were better than us in the trenches. Like, and so until I see him
Iowa or Purdue, it wasn't Iowa
exactly. First of all, let me just can I say something about that Iowa team?
Yeah,
that is one of my favorite non-Ohio State teams ever. People don't realize
last year's Iowa team.
That Iowa team,
the Iowa team from a few years ago. Yeah, the beat JT Barrett.
Yes, that shaped how I play fantasy football. I've won fantasy football the last 2 years because you know what I do? It's a double flex. It's a double flex league and a tight end league. Because of that game, I make sure I draft Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson every single year, all because of that game. So yeah, I love that Iowa team, man. I was sick. I was throwing up because we lost.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
It was bad, but that Iowa team is fantastic.
I would go double down on what you guys said, but I'm also going to throw another thing in there. Ohio State's dropping a 60 ball on Michigan, and I'm saying it's going to be 60 ball with Stroud in there for 3 quarters, and who knows what happens after that. But at least a 60 ball against Michigan this year.
What about an unnecessary gopher too? You think we get one of those? I would love to see one.
I've said this for years. Back when Ohio State with Haskins, I believe it was, they dropped. Rest in peace. When they dropped 62, right? That was the year I'm like, okay, yeah. But now that they lost to Michigan, and Michigan's saying all this crap, like that's really just nonsense crap. They've said all this stuff. I'm sitting here, you're Ryan Day in the locker room, right? You're up, let's say 45 to 15, 10, 45-10 or whatever at halftime. You look at CJ Stroud and, hey, you want to play 4 quarters today? You want to play 4? You want to play 4? Hey, I'm sorry, McCord. I'm sorry, guys, but this one's a little personal. I would not be shocked if you know you're guaranteed for a Big Ten title game and you're up 45 to 10 or whatever. It's the 3rd quarter. You know, I think CJ is going to go up to me like, hey, coach, throw me out there, because I truly believe that, you know, I'm very much about like Michigan, when they start poking the bear is when they get beat really bad, right? Like you look at the last few years when the whole like this thing came out, what happened the next year? Got their butt whooped.
Eviscerated.
So whenever Harbaugh has poked the bear has woke up and the bear has done something that no one really likes. And so I think I would not be shocked in the next few years. It's a combined score of like, you know, 300 to like, or 250 to like, you know, 28, right? Like just pound them in the ground, like throw the elbows, right? So that's my thing is I think they're going to undefeated, win the Natty. But I think on top of that, it's going to be like, you know, just some nice cherries on top. You just pound Michigan to the ground and you make Harbaugh look at himself in the mirror and go, yeah, I'm an idiot. Right? Like what is the Gordon Ramsay thing? I'm an idiot sandwich.
Right?
Idiot
sandwich. Look at you. Idiot sandwich. Like, and then also Desmond Howard too. Like I'm sure that
Desmond Howard, don't even get me started. Fake.
Yeah. I would like to, I don't like Desmond Howard that much after that CJ Stroud, like unnecessary burn, but
it was so lame. It was so lame, man.
It was so unnecessary and so lame. But with your guys' predictions, it sounds like in your scenarios, CJ Stroud is winning the Heisman next year.
100%.
Right? If they go undefeated, like that means
super lock, infinity lock.
That team has to have the Heisman, right?
I'll throw this out here. Top 3, you got Stroud and you got Henderson. Top 3.
Now, do you worry about splitting votes?
I think that's what happened with like Justin Fields and Chase Young.
Yeah, they split some votes. Is this year's Ohio State team? Is this Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart?
It would be JSN and Stroud, right? Going, you would think. Like I know Trevion definitely has the caliber, but I feel like that second guy would most likely be JSN.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if this is going to be a great year, and you heard it here first from all of us that Ohio State's winning the Natty. And so when we come back again this time next year, we're going to have the same thing. Probably about the same
Cheers,
thing.
fellas.
Cheers, fellas. Exactly. So Josh, I know to finish up the show, you have a topic that you've been very passionate about. So if you want to explain this, so that way Kris can maybe join in on the conversation.
I will. And let me make sure I'm getting this correct. Kris, you are also a Browns fan like the rest of us, right?
It's funny because I am not. No, I am not a Browns fan.
This is gonna be
okay.
But he's a Cleveland guy, though. So,
but I covered.
I know he's
from
the area. I couldn't remember if he's ever talked about which NFL team he likes.
But do you know who Cameron Justice is? She's one of the beat writers for. She's always on the scene. I don't know. That's who I used to spend a lot of time with in my early radio days.
Gotcha.
And so,
that doesn't ring a bell or anything.
It's like her and Mary Kay Cabot or with Channel 5 or whatever.
Okay,
and they do a lot of
I
that.
know Mary Kay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, since you're a Cleveland guy, we thought you'd still chime in on this. So,
yeah,
Josh,
no, I do. I cover the Browns, kind of for our sister station down the hallway. So I'm tapped in. Just not I'm a Giants fan.
Oh my God.
Well, here, bro. Fist bump for knowing what it's like to root for
misery.
Terrible front office.
Mm-hmm.
Holy
misery indeed. So,
but I root for the Bears as well. I love Justin Fields. Terrible front office, but I love Justin.
I'm a big Justin guy too. Like, not a Buckeye fan, but I got to interview him after the Big Ten Championship 2019. And after talking to him, like, I just left that conversation thinking this guy is different. Like, you can hear some guys, like, they just aren't it, right? Like, they're kind of like sluggish, or they don't have like
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones, yeah. Oh my gosh. I left that Justin Fields conversation thinking this guy's a dude. He's going to do some stuff in the league. He just needs a front office that will draft players and sign players that'll support him, and a head coach that'll run an offense that he fits in. But okay, we got all that out of the way. So yeah, you guys kind of know how I feel about the whole Deshaun Watson situation already. I feel like
too much.
I feel like Baker Mayfield has proven himself from his rookie season, and then year 3 where he took the team to the playoffs and won a game that, I mean, he wasn't the issue. Like, this was going to be our guy going forward. And then obviously last year he had the injury and ended up having his worst statistical season of the year, which I believe those two things were correlated. And he was going to come back this year 5, be totally healthy, and the Browns are going to be back to playoff contention. And then they go out and make the trade for Deshaun Watson, give this man $230 million, give away 3 first-round picks, and don't even bother shedding Baker in this trade. He's still on the roster, so that creates like all the drama, obviously. And then this week, they finally trade him to Carolina. I think he's going to do some good things there, but they only got a 5th-round pick in return, and they're paying half his salary to try and beat them week 1. It's just absolutely nuts. I think this whole situation was totally mishandled and unnecessary. Kris, what's been your take on this whole Cleveland quarterback situation? It just seems like it's the good old days of adding more names to the quarterback jersey.
It is.
Yeah, the forever growing quarterback jersey. It's funny because a lot of people retired it after Baker Mayfield did so well, made the playoffs.
Right.
There was hope. So it's like you retired that thing and I got to bring it back. And it might include, some other guys on there now, but it's
Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs on that probably this year too.
Yeah. That's so garbage. Goodness gracious. It's crazy because the Browns made a desperation move when they didn't have to make a desperation move. I know Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback when he's on the field than Baker Mayfield, but you only want to give a guy that much guaranteed money when he's guaranteed to play. And it seems like everything that we've heard as kind of fans and media has been a surprise to everyone involved. And that should never be the case when you give somebody $230 million. Baker Mayfield can get his team to the playoffs, yes. And I've seen some quarterbacks worse than Baker make it to a Super Bowl, Jared Goff being one. Like, Jared Goff is nowhere near the quarterback, in my opinion, that Baker is. But yet there he was in the Super Bowl behind a power run game. So I think it's funny because, Baker Mayfield was bad this last year. He was injured, and I think it was easy to make him the scapegoat for the Browns team, forcing or justifying a move out of desperation. But really, Stefanski needs to be better. Like, everybody needs to be better. And it's funny that Baker has to wear all of this. And he's going to go down to Carolina, and now it's up to – the Haslams frustrate me. They're so selfish, and they're so arrogant.
Hey, they saved the crew. Don't get me started on selfishness.
Yeah, they saved the crew. You're right. Shout out to the crew. We love soccer around here. But it was a very arrogant move to trade for Deshaun Watson, to sell the farm and the children inside of it, to not know if he was going to play. And it's like, and then, like you said, the fact that Baker Mayfield wasn't involved in that trade is goofy, just for you to trade away Baker Mayfield for an open bag of Doritos and a half-eaten taco. So it's like you do all these things in line, and then you don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be playing this year. Now, I think the NFL is ridiculous. I think the NFL should have had this squared away a long time ago, and they put everybody in a bad spot because of this. And now guys' careers are going to be on the line because of this.
Wait on the politics.
Yeah, playing politics, and then like we talked about, I think before the show, the recommendation of a 12-game suspension.
Ridiculous.
Since when are we recommending suspension?
They offered to settle. Like, we'll offer you a 12-game suspension, and it's like, now we're going to turn that down. It's like, is this how suspensions have always been negotiated?
Is this how jail time works? Like,
and the player's just like, you know what? I feel like that's fair. Yeah, I'll take that 12-game.
He never even was criminally even the jury was like, yeah, he did nothing wrong. So why are we? There's no evidence. There's nothing. Like what?
Cleared twice.
Yeah, I mean they had a black man in Texas with the 2 juries, and they both said no. That means there's minimal evidence. It's just like if I ever got into a fight at school and the principal pulled me in the office, he said, "All right, Chris, so we can either do a 10-day suspension or we can review everything." I'm like, that's not how this works. If you get into a fight at school, you go to the office, you get suspended.
Yep.
That's just how it goes.
That's the way it works.
And the NFL is the weirdest principle ever because we don't know what's going on. And even being like I'm in Northeast Ohio, dog. Like all the reporters that are floating out my sources this, my sources that, I'm sources. People ask me, and I just like float out random numbers because nobody knows what actually is going on behind those closed doors.
Are there 45 cases or are there 5 cases? We don't know.
I don't know. Then there's like an HBO special about it. I don't like
weird.
Like weird. This is so odd. Like it's so incredibly odd.
Yeah, HBO did Hard Knocks on the Cleveland Browns.
They're making money.
A couple seasons too early. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, there should be they should just have a permanent fixture. Like it's literally, call it the quarterback room, and every year you just journal their quarterback journey because it's so ridiculous and it's never easy, man. Like I envy all the teams that have it easy just for 3 years. Like even when the Colts had Andrew Luck and he was always hurt, it was always easy. I always went to camp knowing, okay, I don't have to worry about my quarterback because I know but I have to worry about that position, that position, that position. And you go even with Jared Goff for those first 5 years, you don't have to worry about it. It's like you go to camp every year, it's all good, we're good. But with the Browns, there's so much drama. Whether we got dads posting videos about all the times OBJ was open. We got Baker Mayfield playing 10 hours of Halo before the Green Bay game. We got all this nonsense here, and it's like, can it just be easy for one freaking week? Because for me, like as a guy who covers the sport and the Browns, like things for me personally are better when the Browns are better. Like it's easier to do shows. More people call in. More people talk. It's more fun to go to games. But when they're bad, all people do is pick apart me on the air being negative. And it's like, guys, like I'm not the one that played Halo for 10. I'm not a dad on the team posting videos. I'm not the one that traded for Deshaun Watson. So
it's even like the whole Baker thing with that coming out here recently about his childishness, which we've known this. Mm-hmm. We've known this for years when he's grabbed his junk and forcing it against Kansas. Like, dude, of all teams, really Kansas? Like, really? Kansas. And so
the last thing he said to Matt Rule was, you forgot who daddy was. I'm gonna get out there and spank you during the Baylor Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was the
Baylor
last
at the time.
Yes.
Like this is
I've never put these two together.
And that's where like
the coach of Baylor, man.
But that's the thing is and
then Robbie Anderson too. Like we all know about the Robbie Anderson Instagram comments.
Yeah, so. But it's just for me, it's like as a Browns fan, and like if you've been watching this show, if you guys been paying attention, all of you that are watching or listening, you all know that I'm very neutral on this. I haven't put any feet on either side until I see what happens. If Baker beats us week 1, I'll have a lot of very bad stomach aches and I'll be very frustrated. But I will say this, if in the next 3 to 4 years, the Browns go out and win a Super Bowl, then I'm sorry. I will apologize to everyone. Like, this is the thing. Out of my family, like my brother's a Bengals fan. Don't ask me that story. I don't know how that happened. And then, my dad and I, my dad's never been a Baker fan. Like, I don't think he has. He might come on the show in a few weeks and tell me that he has been, but I've always felt he's had some of this. I've always said Baker is good for a guy that you want to manage a game. But when you have an all-pro running back, another all-pro running back, you have receivers that are tangible. They can get the job done if you need them to. And you have 2 of the best defensive ends when they're healthy, when they're at the top of their game. To me, it was like, it's almost like, Baker sometimes almost wanted to get out of Cleveland. I know he loved Cleveland, or at least that's the stories. He loved Cleveland. He loved being around Cleveland. But there's almost that feeling for me, like, did he ever really want to stay in Cleveland? Even past the injury stuff, like there's always those things that come up with him being childish or whatever. But also I look at Stefanski, like get a hold of your locker room, dude.
Straight up.
Like, dude, get a hold of your locker room. Like you know, we heard about the Urban Meyer situation. Urban Meyer, that was a different level, but he was almost too much in control. And now you have Stefanski, who you have your star quarterback, who, by the way, when you all were talking about this stinking trade, you never even brought him into the discussion. And I agree with Josh. Why didn't you put him in the trade to trade the guy?
Exactly. That would have made the most sense. Like if you're going to bring in Deshaun with the expectation of him being the starter,
and he's a Texas boy,
it makes sense to include Baker Mayfield in this.
Give
trade
him something. Give him a peace offering.
Yes.
Give him an olive branch. Be like, hey, I know you're going to hate us here. Just let you know, but hey, we're going to trade you to Texas. Now, do I think he makes Carolina a Super Bowl contender? Heck no. I think Carolina. Sam Darnold is a terrible quarterback. Sam Darnold is bad. He's trash. I'm sorry, he just is. But do I think that Baker Mayfield going down there is making them a playoff contender? Maybe gets them there, but you're going to be in there with, let's be honest. The NFC South has, Tom Brady. So, I mean, it's really who's up next. And I think for the Browns, this is what I'll say. I put this out there to some of my family or friends that are Browns fans. I said this: the Browns will get as far as Stefanski relies back on what he did a few years ago. Hand the ball off, and when you need to pass it, you pass the ball. If Brissett's quarterback, I swear if he throws it more than 15 times a game, we're going to lose all those games. Because if you rely on a guy like freaking Nick Chubb, we learned that Derrick Henry, don't run it too much. Derrick Henry gets hurt, right? But you don't run it too little. Why is Chubb have less attempts than everyone when he averages 5.5 yards an attempt?
I think half the games last year he had 15 carries or less.
And if you're the Browns, you can afford to run it too much because you have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Like, please run it too much. I'm a big boxing fan, right?
You also have one of the best offensive lines in the whole NFL,
right?
I'm a huge boxing fan, and I think that like when I watch boxing fights, one of the things I love is like guys who like up the work rate every round without throwing haymakers. They just like keep getting in there, get in tight, jab, one headshot, jab, one headshot. I think that like that's how football should be played. And I think if you have a power run game, that's the same as a boxer turning up the work rate. Now, what a lot of these young coaches like to do is let me just go in there and just throw haymakers. Let me just go out there and throw the ball 85 times in a game, and it gets silly because it's like no, just up the work rate slowly. You will beat this team down, and it breeds more nastiness. Like the more you run the ball, the better your offensive line gets. Period, and the harder it is actually. I watched Jared Goff make it to the Super Bowl, guys. Like Jared Goff
made a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo has made a Super Bowl. Tannehill has gotten to the AFC Championship
Jimmy
game.
G to the
Blake Bortles has made an AFC Championship game, I believe. So it's like you don't need that superstar quarterback that like you don't need.
I love Eli Manning. I'm a Giants fan. We talked about it. I love Eli Manning. He's not dynamic. He's not a superstar. But guess what we did? We won 2 of them things. 2 of them in my lifetime because we handed the ball off. Yeah, exactly. We beat Tom Brady twice without a dynamic passing attack and because we had running backs. Exactly. Right. The helmet catch and the Mario Manningham. Yes. Shout out Michigan.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
But that's kind of like been my MO with Baker Mayfield. Like when people tell me like, he's never going to win a Super Bowl in Cleveland because, he's only this good. And it's like, you don't need a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Tom Brady to get it done because we've seen these other quarterbacks in the league get it done because their coaches play to the team's strengths. They don't rely like Mike Vrabel's not relying on Ryan Tannehill to win him games. He's relying on the offensive line and Derrick Henry. Same thing with Kyle Shanahan. As crazy and genius of an offensive mind as he is and everybody brags about, he's not out here trying to throw 50 times a game with Jimmy G. He knows that the strength of their team is in the dink and dunk and the run game and the defense. And that's why San Francisco's been so good like these last few years since he's been there. And it's like I just wish Stefanski would get a grip of that and be like letting Nick Chubb be Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt being Kareem Hunt, and like just let Baker kind of manage the game just like Tannehill and Jimmy G do in their offenses. And instead he's trying to play football like he's like Baker Mayfield's Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen or somebody like that. Like the Christmas Day game was the most telling when at halftime Baker had 3 interceptions and Stefanski still throwing the football. Meanwhile, it's still only a 1-score game. We're in this thing. Nick Chubb has less than 5 touches so far in the first half, and it's like, what's going on here?
But that's because Baker Mayfield was playing Halo for 10 hours the night before. That's what the belief is.
I mean, yeah, like
no, it's so funny
Halo
because
definitely didn't help.
The passing game is so hard to replicate week to week, and that'll make you susceptible to weird losses because weird things happen when you throw the ball. Like, that's why I believe that Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl, because, it's so hard to go on a string late in the year where you can throw the ball 40 times a game and not expect something bad to happen at some point.
Especially playing in like weather like Green Bay and Lambeau and stuff like that. Like, it's never the best conditions.
No, exactly. So I think quarterbacks that throw haymakers in general, like Stefanski likes to do, they just don't win as much because it's so hard to replicate those haymakers. Like, I watched Drew Brees, like, death by 1,000 cuts, but he only won one Super Bowl. And then I watched a guy like Eli Manning who, led the league in interceptions like 2 or 3 times, but the fact that they had a good running game and were comfortable with it, they were able to get some wins. Even Tom Brady, like, I've never looked at a Tom Brady offense with the exception of 1 year and thought, wow, that passing attack is so dynamic. It was always
2007 when they lost, right?
Yeah, Randy Moss. Yeah, Randy Moss. That was the only time I ever thought, wow, Tom Brady's passing attack is so dynamic.
You could say that like Tom Brady was in the best offense in the league. I feel like 2007 is one of the only seasons you can say that.
Exactly. And so that's where I'm at. I firmly believe that quarterbacks that throw haymakers, you don't need that to win Super Bowls. I think the code is more up the work rate, up more of the short stuff, and kind of stay consistent and stay on schedule. And you just open yourself up to more if you're not on schedule. So I love power run game, and I think that's what the Browns could have benefited from. And it's funny because it was like we're gonna give you the answer sheet and the test 2 weeks before the test. And Stefanski, for some reason, would just throw out the answer sheet, and he got away with it because the noise surrounding Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield was so loud.
Yeah. My thing is to wrap up this episode, I think it's the only way to do this is, okay, I want to give an over-under how many games, I would say, what is your guess on how many games Watson will play this year, and what is the final win total for the Browns? We'll start with Josh. What is I'll start to give you guys some time to think. I have Watson plays 4 games, and I have the Browns winning 10 games. I'm very short-sighted, but I just don't see how it's more than that. So I have Watson playing 4 games, last 4 games of the year, and then it's 10 game total wins. Josh, What do you got?
Yeah. I think Deshaun's going to get suspended. Let's go. I mean, they already tried 12, and I don't think they're going to get that, which is why they're trying to settle there. So let's go with 8. And since Cleveland's schedule is like very easy early on, like I feel like those are winnable games, even with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. We'll go with, let's go with 9 wins. If Deshaun Watson gets to play half the games, Cleveland's going to win 9 games this season.
Chris?
I have them going 9-8. And I have Deshaun Watson playing the final 4 games.
So similar, yeah.
Maybe 10. Maybe I haven't planned. Yeah, I'm right. I think it'll be between 10 and 12.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's gonna be a weird year for Browns fans, but you know what?
If he gets suspended, or do you trust Brissett, or do you call Cam Newton?
No, Brissett. I'll trust Brissett.
I feel like we brought Brissett in because we didn't trust Case Keenum.
Do you call Andrew Luck? How much you haven't got to offer Andrew Luck to come out of retirement?
Dude, he's sitting pretty. That's all I got to know. But no, I will say this, Kris. First off, thank you so much for tuning in the Baseline Podcast. I don't know if you've ever done a podcast with somebody that's in Europe and has internet problems, but
no, this is a first. I love it. I love it.
First, it's glowing over here. There's a chance to get tickets pretty cheap to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game in Germany. It's only about a couple hours away, really. So it's really dope. So I've been telling my wife, I'm like, it's not that far away. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be some development on that. I don't know. But it's in also like a soccer stadium that's like bigger than any football stadium in America. So it'd be really dope to go see. But anyways, thank you so much, Kris, for joining on. Can you let everyone know your social media and where they can find you and Zach as well?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'll just plug the Menace stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is Menace2Sports. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And we post daily content there on all 4. So that's kind of where you find me. I run those pages. So if you ever interact with anybody, it'll be your boy here, intern of the year.
There you go. And all those of you listening, make sure you hit that thumbs up. I should say watching. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. You can see all the other videos that we've done. We've done videos with my brother, who Josh and I knew nothing about soccer, and it was very hilarious to see Josh's face when we asked him to make picks. Still funny. You could see Josh's rant on our Instagram page at at baseline.podcast, where you can see all of our fun stories we share, our opinions that are normally right. Right, Josh? We're always right on all of our opinions.
Yeah. Like our
100%.
most recent hot take is that Novak Djokovic is the GOAT.
That was me. And then someone decided to point out things to me.
Aaron
I'm
Lynn
sorry.
had to push back a little bit on that.
Aaron Lynn of the Fifth and Goal podcast decided to be a little sneaker on that one. But no, if you can check out all of our stuff there. And again, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, share with your friends and family. We have a fun time. We have guests. I think my dad's coming on in a few weeks. We have another guest in the works, possibly coming on in a few weeks as well. So yeah, and maybe if you like this enough, we can have Chris come back, during
and leave a
season.
review. Reviews help.
Yes.
Reviews help the page so much.
Stars,
leave a
yes.
review.
Leave us 5 stars. Also, if you want Chris to come back, let us know in the comments. Let us know, because we love having people that will just banter with us about random things. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Hopefully, Josh doesn't have another rant over the weekend. We don't know.
We'll see if Cleveland gives me a reason.
We'll see if Cleveland gives him a reason. But until next time, we'll see you and have a good week. So we'll see you guys. Peace.